Welcome to the Regrettable Century. This is it's Ben and Jason.
I don't think we've ever done this. You and me.
We've never done this like this. This should be very obvious. Yes. We're gathered here today to discuss areas of ambiguity where we may have found ourselves in contradictory positions.
I suppose I have to take responsibility for this conception of an episode. And I think I've had a gathering storm of ideas just from the time I've been on the podcast. And I feel like the sort of one of the missions of the podcast, which I think we accomplish, is we critique. We provide a lot of critique to certainly the left as we have experienced it in our lives, as we witness it online and to a certain extent in the real world.
In both the URL and the IRL.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's the old Marxist ruthless criticism of all that exists, and including of ourselves. There have been ample repentance of past sectarian ideological sins on our from each of us, and but also ultimately you kind of, and you hear this from certain critics of ours, what are our positions? We don't have a uniform position, and we don't, because we disagree, or we even disagree with ourselves. And this is just kind of rolling observations on my part of noticing these areas of ambiguity or contradiction. Sometimes it'll come up when we ask a pointed question. Well, what does this mean? Or is it this or is it this? And you say something like, well, the answer is yes. That happens often enough, right?
Yeah, I think that does happen often enough. I think a long time ago, I decided to constantly try to wade as far into something as I can, and then just to sit in the middle and be uncomfortable. It's I don't know what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just allowing us to just, like you said, to be ambiguous, to be contradictory.
And we never had our mission statement, if we have one, was never to provide a solution to the things we were critiquing.
Right.
That would be too easy, and that would make us, to my frame of mind, untrustworthy. But one thing that has come up for me is we've all sort of been burned to greater and lesser extent from sort of leftist activist subcultures and circular firing squads, you might say, or just from feeling like having our time wasted. And so we're in different sorts of ways in a sort of hiatus of being actively involved in a political project. I think you're the most stark example, because you've said often enough, you've been a communist since you were 16 or whatever, and involved in some kind of socialist organizing or labor organizing. And now you find yourself kind of in a contemplative place and unpacking a lot of the stuff that you have borne witness to. One of the sort of things I notice that we come to is what do we do? Well, we're not satisfied with models or certain models that we see in the DSA. We're certainly not satisfied with the old Trotskyite. Oh, I made the sin of saying Trotskyite instead of Trotskyist.
I think it'll be okay.
That's the proof that I am a heretic. Of old Trotskyist microsects and things that have a kind of a purist messaging and purist orthodoxies There's a whole bunch of those variants from all over the leftist sphere. And then we're like, okay, well, to do anything, we have to like have a real community that we are involved in, right? Embed ourselves in some kind of community based in real life, right?
Yeah.
And I can't help but think, okay, well, didn't we sort of have that in this messy, sometimes toxic leftist subculture that we exited? Like we knew those people in real life too. We had some problems with some of them, and yet we're not in relation to them anymore. Um, that's one thing that comes to mind immediately with regard to sort of a contradictory position. Like,
When you talk,
yeah, so
oh,
like
go ahead.
like
Go
like
ahead.
community can, if we're starting in such a broad place, we're dealing with like the atomization of whatever this whatever this is that we live in, where we devote so much of uh, our lives to whatever somebody said online um, throughout the day, and we're not like embedded in our own lives in a real way with other people that we are invested in together, even if it's as simple as just reading a book together. Like, okay, that's pretty basic. So we can just begin to forge relationships in our own lives, right? We can go to church if we're of a mind to. We can go to a reading group in real life. Or we can go to a protest with people we really know. Um, or we can, I don't know, you can think of other examples. So why do we withdraw from the very imperfect um, versions of that we've already experienced?
So I think what I would say about that is I mean, there are a couple of things. The first thing is just that world is increasingly going. I mean, well, it's going away. It's like I definitely don't think that anybody should stay away from a group like something like the DSA. I mean, hell, I went to check out the local DSA meeting earlier this month, and I think it's whatever. They're involved in some things, and it's probably worth doing, and that's cool. Um, I think that for me, what I'm advocating for is for a conscious construction of a community, which is more. It's more solid. It has more basis than just the kind of
Just,
signifier of being
yeah.
socialist. You know, like it's like if you live in a tenement and you work in a factory, that's your community.
Mm-hmm.
In like if 1905 but 1920, it's really clear what your community was. In today's world, okay, so like to go to that local DSA meeting, I looked up online. I knew what I was looking for first of all, and that's why I looked up the DSA,
Right.
and I drove 35 minutes to get to the meeting. And I sat there for a while, and then I left.
Right.
And so even being very intentional about it and being very deliberate and like this was something I even want. The only thing keeping me connected to that community was my own ideological desire to be in some kind of relationship with people who are vaguely concerned with the same sorts of things as me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very different than my neighbors, very different than my coworkers. You know what I mean? Like that's so I think when we talk about a deliberate and intentional community, I do think it has to be based on more than just this, however deep, but this whatever thin ideological agreement.
Well, but we often reference like houses of worship and faith, and your Catholicism has become a prominent part of your lived experience in the past, post accident, especially.
Yeah,
You were grasping for something leading up to that, and that really um, you know, you landed in it. It was a rough landing, but now you find yourself in a state where, okay, let's say your faith, that could be called an affinity that you share
Yeah.
with other Catholics. And I know people, whenever I visit my local St. James, my local church, that drive across the city to visit, and they do that because they have a kind of a shared interest in sort of older um, expressions of liturgical worship and so forth. Um, so those things are not. I think maybe there's just a particular um, thorny bit for us who have been so disappointed by the fusing of politics around that identification. That's
Hmm.
kind of a special. It doesn't really stand muster. It doesn't really create the needed materials to move beyond itself because it stays in its own shadow.
I definitely do think that it's not quite a substitute for. It's maybe a first order. It's like the first gear.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're in this metaphor, I'm trying to get all the way up to the fifth gear, you know?
Right,
Uh,
right,
and so it's definitely not enough. But I do think that when I compare, when you think about my life and I compare it to, hell, even just my own life a few years ago, or to a lot of people I know um, who don't have something like that in their own lives, I will say it's I feel a lot more rooted, a lot more stable, a lot more oriented.
you're talking about your
Yeah,
faith practice.
yeah. But even then, I still have a lack in the sense of a material expression,
Right.
which I think I'm still working on, still um, building.
Yeah.
But I do think that this is more solid than just. I looked up online this Facebook group called whatever socialist. I was like, well, cool. Now I'm in the socialist group. Like, well, it's more than that.
Sure. I mean, we're probably going to wind up circling back around familiar themes for ourselves and for the listeners, but like, so what? How do we wind up in these leftist subcultures, which, if we're to be perfectly honest with ourselves, often resemble cul-de-sacs, right?
Yeah,
They're not. They don't have a lot of cross. They don't have a lot of cross traffic with people who are not self-selecting in the same ways. We wind up there often enough because we don't want to organize with liberals, or we don't want to be inundated by like normie politics, or uh, any expression that conveys that. Like we're so fed up with all of that, and I've kind of come back to where I have greater esteem for the normie liberals than I do for the cul-de-sac socialists. I might even look at something like No Kings, uh, and I mean, I certainly share the opinions of many leftists that it's uh, doesn't really amount to anything. But as far as the sort of energy that's being activated, and as far as the expressions of real people's frustrations, which are more than just the kind of MSNBC hijacked messaging, but are rooted in
right.
like real suffering, real economic woe, real disgust with the way that fellow human beings are being treated. Um, I feel that is something. There's something to that. There's something important. My partner was, she's getting messages from her mom, who's not a political person in any way, very moderate, and people are getting selfies from their parents that are going to these things, expressing themselves in a kind of political, uh, kind of mushy but collective sense. And my response to why I didn't want to go is because we were going as atomized individuals in a diffuse expression of other atomized individuals. And I thought showing up to these kinds of things, which I do think has value, is most valuable when you show up with other people in your union, in your organization. You show up with some kind of orientation to the day after, to catch people
Yeah.
who are looking to do something after too, not just now. It doesn't just evaporate, kind of the way that much of protest culture does.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, like I remember that I forget, it was a couple months ago now. Um, there was the a couple months ago, or may have been almost a year ago. The kind of anti-Tesla
yeah, yeah,
wave
you went to
of
something, didn't
demonstration.
you?
I went to one of those, and there was like there's a line of people protesting outside of a Tesla, like dealership. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. I want to go and see what this is. I want to see what the hell is getting. What is the fire in people's bellies? What does that look like? And I left without I didn't have very many anything really positive to say.
Yeah.
I was like, listen, I'm glad everyone's here, whatever. But like, there was no day after. There was no plan. There was no coordinated anything. There was no like sign up here to get on our mailing list. There's nobody even knew like who put this together.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was even responsible for or representative of anything. And I just thought like there was no basis from which to start to have a discussion about anything. And so when that first round of No Kings protests started, I was like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna I have other things to do.
So you're illustrating exactly why we have wound up uh, on the left in our little leftist bubbles,
Yeah.
because it's like I don't know how to talk to these like these I don't know how to talk to these normal people whose politics is so instantly recuperable into a vanishing meaninglessness. Um, and it's almost like the only hope that any protest culture has is state repression for it to become something. Like who could have, the reason why the first Russian Revolution was kicked off was because Father Gapon, who we later learned was on the payroll by the state, uh, led a march petitioning the czar for the rights of peasants, and they were fired upon by the Cossacks. Right? I mean, that's a crazy example. I'm not, but there are crazy things happening now around ICE,
Yes,
and
definitely.
those are notable examples of resistance. And the people doing those acts, standing up to ICE, their politics are not particularly leftist or progressive. Those are just normal people who happen to be from south of the border or with family members or in communities made up of immigrants. Um, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is it's kind of the origin of so many contradictions that I hear us swimming around is liberalism is the air we breathe. There's no
Yeah.
way to organize against it or in some kind of absentia, uh, or in some kind of like uh, Bordigist cell that will live beyond it.
Well, yeah, and like I never want to discourage anybody. I don't know, whatever, going to these things, showing up and whatever. Uh, still, I think that the discussion we had back in what is this, July, the one that we called Toward the Founding of Something New.
Hmm.
I still think that is a really fundamental series of questions that we have to grapple with. We could, because we have to have something more than just ourselves whenever we show up to this inchoate, disorganized, disaggregated morass of sentiments called called for and organized whatever online. Um, I don't think we should stay away from them. I really don't. I just, but I think we don't have anything else to really. We don't have much else to say. And
I
also,
think
I don't think that that is really the place that if we think that that a workers' movement is necessary, and that challenging for power at the sites of production, distribution, if we challenging for power at the places where power is exercised, then I don't really think it's at the No Kings protests, anyways.
I, I only reference that because it just happened, and I think there's a kind of I think there's a dismissive attitude that we reserve for certain expressions, liberal expressions, uh, that we also will find in the ranks of workers, because everyone is a fucking liberal. It isn't just
Right.
the middle class. It isn't every sort of left side of anything in the culture war or anything in sort of the populist argument about how we should reorder our society. It's all still within the confines of liberalism. And that goes for the right too. Every iteration of what is quote unquote possible is liberalism, even if
Mm-hmm.
we're in some kind of post liberal variant. Like, um, it's not like whether or not to breathe this liberalism. Like, that's not an option. Um, and I
No,
think,
and I think that's an important point, because if the dichotomy is between staying away or else just jumping in and being liberal with all liberals, like, oh, jump in.
well, but I think there's a way of orienting quote unquote what is possible toward something that is about uh, working people's immediate needs and future needs. I think the Zoran Mamdani campaign is illustrative of that. That there is a demand for that kind of messaging,
Yeah.
and it can sort of buck the expectations of sort of how electoral politics function in this country. And I think that's really something to pay attention to, because underlying that is a deeper politics. Um, but people have to have confidence. And that's another problem of like, okay, we can sort of diagnose in advance the failures of this sort of politics, of this sort of reformist within the Democratic coalition movement. But what is that like? How does that build this thing we need
Right. Like,
to be
I know that there are.
yeah, to be smarter in advance of the thing that we kind of need to happen, even if it's true that it won't work. Like, this is just a problem that we always have. People that are advocating for revolutionary change and socialism is something beyond what we deem is possible.
Well, but see, the thing is that Mamdani, he said something negative about Nicolas Maduro, and so that means that he actually supports imperialism, and so
uh,
uh, the thing to do is to talk about how that he is a prop of the imperialist system, and that everyone who's not a anti-imperialist is not a real socialist, and so just stay away until something better comes along.
I mean, that's the straw man version, but the sort of smart version is like, yes, I would like for um, this platform to be realizable, because I care about, there being a counterexample in the sort of neoliberal hegemony. So yeah, you very comically uh, performed the role of the sort of, I don't know what you call that, the ML sort of purist, anti-imperialist position or whatever. But the sort of more nuanced, let's say pessimistic calculation, which I think Chris has voiced, and I certainly see the validity of what he said, that if Mamdani is successful, he will be pounced upon by the system, and there will be a collusion to ruin him or ruin the movement, and so on. The only way he'll get through some of these necessary reforms is to compromise, basically. That's the sort of position of getting things through in our politics, in our established politics. And I see the validity of that critique. But at the same time, if you're trying to mobilize masses of people to believe in something different that goes against the hegemony of neoliberal politics, it kind of helps if you believe in it too, even if you're not totally wedded to this reformist angle of it, that you believe in the gathering storm that can create it in some way and create an example to the rest of the country. Like, this is just a problem if we're making diagnoses for the future. I just don't think we actually can.
Right. It's like one way or the other. These cracks have to be widened.
Yeah, exactly.
And as individuals, we do not have the capacity or the potential to proffer something else.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a reason why I said to me, the dichotomy seems to be between jumping in with all the, like you said, the ambiguities and contradictions, or just folding our arms and staying on the sidelines and saying, this is not what I want. This is not what I have read about, Right.
Which is to say, we have to have a sort of strategy to how we expend our energies as individuals, and also as collectives of however many we are. Because I totally understand the pessimism and frankly the defeatism of looking at something like No Kings or even like the Mamdani campaign and saying, it's like, I really don't see this going anywhere, or I don't see why I should invest any hope or commitment to something that it's just going to make me feel fatigued, and I'm not going to get anything out of it. But like, so we can bring up these extraordinarily goofy expressions of peak liberalism, like the ones that we saw with, what were some of the examples from the No Kings? There was the person saying, thank you, Biden. There were some,
they're innumerable.
There were some really rich ones. Yeah.
When it comes to the Democrats abroad, people, American citizens who are residing on some quasi-temporary basis, whatever, in other countries, they have a no tyrants protests,
right?
Because
they don't want to offend their system.
Yeah, we don't want to offend the people who have kings, and I just think like, damn, that's really like, that says it all, I think.
Hello everyone, it's Chris, just dropping in to remind you that we have a Patreon. On our Patreon, we post 4 extra episodes a month, 2 of which are bonus episodes, and the other 2 are geopolitics episodes. You also get access to our Discord community, which has a zone for social interaction, but it's also where we plan and discuss our reading groups. So if you'd like to be part of our reading group, or just part of our community, please join the Discord. We've also got a merch store, We have a couple of t-shirt designs up, and you can pick what color t-shirt you want, whether you want short sleeve or long sleeve, or we have a couple of different styles of t-shirt that you can pick from. So if you'd like to help us out by throwing a few dollars our way via merch, please head on over to the link which is in our Patreon bio and in the show notes. Lastly, remember to like and subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcatching app. All that stuff does all the magical internet things that drive people towards listening to our podcast. So help us out. Okay, back to the show.
So these are good examples of like the most ridiculous expressions of liberalism. But I feel like we shouldn't forget that there's kind of just a normie liberalism of people wanting, when they say, I want my democracy back, or they say, demanding the rule of law, or something, demanding that ICE be held accountable, or demanding that Medicare be protected, and all of these other things. I'm just reiterating that we have to sort of distinguish between really obnoxious foolishness and like normal human expressions of need. We've talked about having Christian faith forgiveness towards, I mean, I think we exercise it in spades towards conservatives on this podcast, which is a kind of recovering of humanity. And we shouldn't forget that we also have to do that for liberals and leftists. And I think it gets progressively harder to exercise the further left you go for some reason, maybe because it comes closer to home.
I think that's exactly right. It comes a lot closer to home. But also, I think there's something about there's a snide, haughty attitude.
Yeah.
That is pervasive on the nominal far left that
true.
exists. Like, it's easier for me anyways to be a lot more dismissive. And I don't even, whatever, I do not think this is not a good thing. I don't think it should be. It's easier for me to be, it's easier for me to be dismissive because I find this contemptuous attitude toward everybody else I find it contemptible. I find it so, it's very upsetting because these are, ostensibly these are the layers of people who know better. They have something to offer. And yet these are not the people who you want to hear from, or at least I don't want to hear from, but also, you're not going to hear from them because they're too busy talking to each other about how much everyone else is stupid. That's why it's, I have so much more vitriol for, other socialists than I do even for, for anybody else.
I mean, it makes sense. That's where you've spent most of your time. That's where you've encountered humans intimately for the last almost how many 25 years.
Yeah, whatever. Something like that, like about 25 years. Yeah.
But I think
what you're saying is true though. And I do think it's important to to acknowledge that. And I don't want to say what I just said as a defense.
Yeah.
I feel like an explanation is different than a defense.
Yeah.
Or it can be, and it should be.
But forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That applies.
Right, that's exactly
that
right.
applies to the thing that's closest to the wound, right?
That's exactly, yes.
And it comes close to being directed towards ourselves, because we are peripheral to those people in a sense. Like, that's maybe
very much so.
That's maybe why the vitriol exists, because we feel implicated by this attitude of haughtiness. I will say, I think there's something about leftist subcultures. I think they're full of people who are doing really important work where they're not just talking to themselves. Tons of people who are involved in um, labor and migrant and community organizing and things that are not kind of this circular, just sort of performance. But something happens in the milieu of the left that is very unsavory, or it can happen. Um,
What's that?
well, it's ironic because like the criticism has been that most of the people involved in, say, socialist politics or the DSA, we could say, are of the professional managerial class. Except they're not even that. It's more of an attitude. Most of the people in the DSA are workers, just the same as the sort of less educated factions of the labor force are. But there's this elevation of status by way of education, by way of reading groups and shared vocabulary, and all kinds of things that it would be unfeasible and kind of silly to even communicate outside of this circle to workers you're trying to organize, because a lot of our theory has no application.
Right.
It's like in the stratosphere of the future.
Yeah. I think that's very difficult for a lot of us to recognize, and even more difficult to accept. But what you said is very true. However frustrated and annoyed the average DSA type might be, the 90s and early aughts Maoist, Trotskyist, whatever, hyperactivist group that was like, we're independent of the two-party duopoly, man. So we march with the Democrats, but we also hate them.
I know you're speaking from experience.
I am speaking from a bit of experience. I do regard that as profoundly more destructive and profoundly less. It's even further away from what we need. And so I think that the contempt that a lot of whatever, I have so much trouble even using the terms that people use these days. Whatever, the leftists. I still would like to make the contention that there is no such thing. The left is just a variant of liberalism, whatever. But
yeah, I think that's true.
That segment of liberalism has so much contempt for the mainstream of liberalism. It's like, whatever. I just think that they're even less what we need.
It's pretty when you try and talk about it, it's confusing because
it really is.
The leftist variant of liberalism, left liberalism, has profound contempt for normie liberalism and is antagonistic towards rightist liberalism, which has reactive contempt. Everything is very enclosed in this sort of this haze that you can't even see through. Like,
I think this is important to just like kind of walk through very quickly.
Yeah.
Modernity for the last 500 years or so has been marching pretty inexorably toward this place we are now, where at one point a conservative in a given social struggle might be the supporters of the king, and the liberals might be the radical elements of society who thought we don't need a king anymore. You push that far enough along, and liberalism
they're still saying that.
Well, and there's also that's socialism, fascism, these contenders for taking up this mantle of taking up the project of modernity and taking it further. have all gone by the wayside. And all that's left is just liberalism looking inward. And it's created an enormously contradictory and very confusing situation. And it's also untenable. Like, who the hell knows how long this situation will last, how long it will maintain, or how we will advance whatever, how we'll step out of it. But yeah, so it has left us with a very confusing set of conditions, with very confusing times that we live in. I think that we can be very critical and very even upset about liberalism, and also recognize that there's no alternative on offer.
No, and that's why I would contend we can't discount any ascendant or ignitable social force that is mobilizing popular discontent. The most readily available example is the Mamdani campaign, that is wielding a populist rhetoric and policy demand that is deeply ensconced in liberalism, but is demanding a reorganization of what that means, because you're taking what is available, what is deemed possible, and you're messaging that basically right between the eyes of the system and what it says it will allow, and you're mobilizing people toward that end. And I don't think you can skip that step.
I think it's very undialectical to think that the challenge to what is can come from without.
Right.
The challenge to what is going to come from within what is.
Right. Exactly.
Like, if liberalism has defeated all the contenders for supremacy, for leadership, and all of the discordant kind of all the threads of the different thought have all kind of collapsed inward, and it's all part of this one big mass. All these internal contradictions are constantly, brushing against each other, and it's whatever is going to come next, whatever is going to come as a possibility, is only going to come from within that mix. It's only going to come from within that maelstrom.
Yeah.
What even is there outside of it, anyways? It's not even just that it's not likely to come out of it. What is there outside of it? If capital dominates the globe, liberalism dominates. The liberal philosophical paradigm is the paradigm. That's what is.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about developing a competitor, something to counter liberalism's hegemony from without, where's it going to come from? Space? Like, we only live on the planet. We only live within the realm of human beings, and human beings are entirely within this paradigm.
Yeah. So in this sort of reapproach to human beings, be they wherever they fall on the ideological chart, I think we need to be equipped with preaching class, and that right now, and in the way that it has come about and has ascended, is something like affordability. Like that is the message in which to preach class right now in our politics.
Absolutely. If we're talking about what might become possible from within liberalism, then we have to find the loose threads that, in the stitching that makes up the liberal patchwork of things.
Right.
Say, what can we actually tug on?
Right.
And you're right. That's exactly what it is. So it's, you have made references to this in the past. I think I wanted to say this very explicitly. I am a proponent of an explicit populist approach of populism, and however inadequate, however limited a populist approach to the world might be. That's what there is right now. And so I think if you have a socialist political framework, if your ideas are informed by Marxism, if your historical if your heroes, your points of reference are revolutionary, whether it's like 1917 or if it's 1794 or whatever, 1792 rather. Um,
You mean like the directory?
oh yeah, that's why I said 1794 is the directory.
That'd be funny.
That's actually it.
That'd be funny to meet someone whose heroes were the directory.
Somebody was like, "Yeah, dude, we got fucking Robespierre." No, but like to be an effective representative of that tradition, you want to call yourself a Bolshevik, you're going to call yourself a whatever. It means to, I think it will mean, and it does mean to operate within this framework of a populist, whatever, reform orientation within the liberal paradigm, and say, yeah, you're right. We should have some kind of limitations, some kind of, I don't know, maximum wage. We should have affordability. We should have laws against. You can't be like serving in the IDF and in Congress or whatever.
Right, right.
However,
that's a low bar. That's such a low bar.
Yeah, and however much more that there is that you think there should be, you got to till that earth, because it's flat, it's dead. You have to make the ground worth sowing in again.
Yeah. Well, you have to recognize we're in a drought.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think that we have to just, and we've said this before, but in various ways, but I think we're always going to have to repeat it. We have to accept that the ruptural moments in our own lifetimes will not look like the ruptural moments of our great grandparents' lifetimes.
Right.
When we talk about, I am a communist, and so I only think that the only real worthwhile activity is when we organize the proletarian vanguard for the seizure of power. It's like this, you're talking about fantasy. It doesn't even matter that it's a good thing. It doesn't matter that it's appealing. There is currently these aren't things which are even remotely. They only make sense in your own head. They don't make sense to anybody else, to the people who you ostensibly want to be in communion with, if you want to organize.
Well, this is why, after we've sort of reapproached humanity from our sort of, I was thinking about myself and also us on the left. We're sort of like the leftist version. Did you ever read Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky?
But it's been long enough to write.
Well, it's a long time for me too, but it's basically like a recluse who has suffered multiple personal disappointments and minor traumas, and is sort of removed himself from the social world and expends much ink, all his energy to sort of challenging ghosts from his past in the privacy of his own sort of hovel. And I do feel like that's a perfect sort of example of the modern day leftist or Marxist. Oftentimes is like, we're sparring with ghosts, or we're hunting for ghosts to spar with. And
there we go.
And, I think let's reapproach other human beings outside of our bubbles, and like, whether they be conservatives, liberals, or leftists, we have to find in each example of the many different kinds of politics which are always contradictory and are always some version of liberalism, a way to preach class. How do we preach class? What's the language to get that through our conservative family members, to reorient their grievances toward issues of class? Everybody, this is why I like these programs like Breaking Points, and or even some of these right-wing figures, because they're thinking a lot about class, and sort of there's a big question of the sort of libertarian orthodoxy that dominated the right for so long. And I disagree with their versions of that, but they're talking about class, and I just think that needs to be foremost in any sort of relating, even the most basic of political ideas with other people as individuals, in any of the venues we spend time in, where politics come up, because it's on everybody's mind, because we're living through such a precarious moment. Everyone is feeling this, unless you like unless you invested in gold at the right time, you're worried.
I mean, nobody that I ever encounter on any kind of semi-regular basis is not troubled by, or just suffering. Like I don't mix in. Well, ever since I stopped working in Hollywood, I don't encounter people who are
Doing okay,
doing so well. Yeah, doing so well that they don't notice. It's been a long time now.
Yeah, I think of our dedicated listener Trey, who is in a very, dare I say, arch conservative locale and church, and he just kind of fights the good fight in his own footsteps, engaging his relatives and his friends and contacts in this small town in the South, as a communist. I don't think he's preaching communism. I think he's enacting, he's walking with Christ or something, but he's engaging his community, and he's complicating people's assumptions, and he's getting people to talk. Anyway, I just wanted to shout out Trey, because I think that's kind of difficult to not become the underground man, with your Marxist politics.
Because that's what there is to do. Like I said, but it's funny because I didn't mean to do this, but it turns out this sort of sets the parameters for the whole discussion. You can either stand aside with your arms folded and say, "This is not what I want."
Yeah.
This does not yet exist in the way that I want it to exist. Or you could just say, "Well, this is what there is."
Right.
So I'm going to go and talk to, real human beings and try to find some way to make something decent happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that your shout out of Trey is very appropriate. I think that any and everybody who exists in a situation, which is just all of us, we are all of us faced with that same dichotomy, those same questions.
Yeah, and if it's just sort of, you can frame it as, if you want to call it anti-reformist reforms, I don't care. If you're just trying to hit the pressure points that you need, or if it's just organizing with what is, your neighbors in your community, whatever is or is not recuperable is almost beside the point. I assume everything is. I assume besides human love, besides friendship and things that are not, I don't know, don't fall sway to power politics and commodity fetishism. I don't know what is not recuperable right now.
I don't think anything is. This is a lot of why for me, it makes so much sense to appeal to, and to reference, the church, to go to your parish, to go to to be involved in something. Basically, try to be more like Trey, because if your radical politics don't have some outlet, you are obligated. It is on you to go and find an outlet for that.
What is he
somewhere?
What does he always refer to himself as?
A himbo.
So we're saying that himboism is the real vanguard.
I'm saying that if you if you're not going and getting rolling up your sleeves and getting your elbows dirty or whatever the hell, that's a weird metaphor. If you're not doing something because you only want to do something with communists and you only want to do communist things, so you're just not doing anything. Just get over yourself. Go and find something to do. And if you are lucky enough to have other people around you who are like, I agree, we need communist stuff, that just means you have more people with whom to go out and figure out what to do. Reading a book about communism is not a substitute for going and talking with your neighbors, going and talking with the people in your building, going and talking with the people in your office, in your warehouse, wherever you work, and organizing all that latent power that people have into something that's worth wielding. If you work with or you live with or you have other communists around, then you're fortunate. But that they are not the substitute for the masses, for the class. That's you still just have to go out and find something to do. It's just still a necessity.
I almost feel like, as opposed to becoming the underground man, the underground Marxist man, or woman or person, from Dostoevsky's unwritten sequel, that is, if the choice is between that and plugging into literally anything, I don't know what if it's involved in sort of creating relationships with other human beings in your community and trying to change your community for the better. I mean, maybe you'll have to leave that shit at a certain point.
Yeah,
maybe,
sure.
Maybe you'll have a really great conversation with someone else inside of that group. I don't know. I just...
Well, and just to be very clear, I don't want to equivocate on this. Also, like it's not just that. Like I think, a church is there's a collection of people who gather together on some kind of regional basis. They all, they're all neighbors. It's not just that. I also happen to be a believer. I also do think it really does matter that I'm not trying to sneak in my socialist message. I talking about the pretty standard Christian message. I just happen to also be a socialist. I find the marriage of those two things to be so seamless, so easy.
Yeah.
But I recognize, like, yeah, sure, not everybody listening. Hell, not even most people listening will be of the same mind as me.
Right.
And I do think it's still necessary to go out and engage with the world as it is and not as you wish it to be.
I want to say something. Maybe we're getting towards the end, but
yeah, we probably are.
I feel it. But so you mentioned reading about communism, and I just happen to know that this podcast is very pro reading group. We're engaged in a lot of reading groups, whether it's the four of us or with our listeners. We learn a lot from reading. We read all the time. We're always reading and sending each other what we're reading.
Yeah, constantly.
Constantly. We're obsessed about history and about what's happening in the world. And yet, that's another sort of perhaps an area of ambiguity or contradiction. Like, we recognize that is not a political project per se. That is
no, but that informs.
It should.
Our political projects.
It
should rather.
Well, but so much of my experience in leftist politics has been sitting in a reading group, and some of them have been amazing. Some of them have been not so amazing, but
it's been about 50-50 for me.
But it's like, okay, well, how do we link our reading together to, our going out, go ye into the world together.
I mean, I guess it depends on the place from which we're starting. If you're in a, if you and like 3 or 4 other people are like socialists in your town and you get together to read stuff periodically, then that's great. Then the 3 or 4 of you ought to go and find something to do, and then you should still read socialist literature, and hell, maybe find a 5th or 6th person to in the thing that you're doing to come back. And your reading group can be the basis. Can be you can begin to, I don't know, organize the hub of something else, and it happens to work the same way if you're only one. But yeah, I think that the socialist reading group, the study of heavy theoretical questions, is vital, and it should not be a substitute for, a replacement for, let's call it the work. And as often as possible, it shouldn't be entirely separate from it either.
Yeah. There's so much to read for my own edification. I'm not sure that has anything to do with the work that needs to be done, though, to be perfectly honest.
No, I think
I'm not sure I need to read anymore to invest in the most basic politics. I feel like I'm voicing a real paradigm that exists for Marxists writ large. Like our politics have become reading.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So, how do we how are we concluding this?
Well,
we just fade out?
You could say something about Hegel. That's another one of the big bugaboos I have, was when we get to like some kind of concrete contradiction, I need to bring up Hegel.
Well, but that's
where's the Hegel? Bring it. What's the right Hegel to quote? Well, I would say that endeavoring to have a relationship with your community, your neighbors, your book club, your podcast listeners, your virtual reading group, involves some kind of faith, some kind of willingness to give of yourself. And I would also venture to say that I can't think of too many examples of where seeking out other people to think about a different way of being together and living together. I can't think of a way to do that is wrong. I mean, maybe don't go to the Klan meeting in your township, but
that's probably not the best idea.
This is where we wind up when we kick this dirt up, right? Is like these quandaries beg for a concrete response. Like, let's say you had utmost confidence in the DSA, you would say, and that's why, boys and girls, you should go out and join the DSA, or whatever. And that's why, boys and girls, you should go to the closest ICE protest.
Well, I mean, so sure, but we don't have that. All we have instead is just the contradiction of the moment. And I think it's in like I don't remember where, but it's somewhere in the introduction to the Phenomenology of Spirit.
Oh my gosh.
And I have a notebook that has this written down somewhere, where Hegel talks about that one must tarry with the contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
Just accept that this is just how it's going to be. You just have to tarry with it for a while. It's just to become like, this is something we've said since the very beginning of this podcast. We have to become comfortable with the discomfort. We have to tarry with the contradiction.
That's why I think it's okay. I think it's okay to like literally join any kind of positive gathering, because it's not really about the program or the politics of it being correct or perfect. It's about the bonds you're forging with other human beings that can outlast any given project, and that you can build upon in the kind of politics that we envision later. these are just things that have bothered me. Where I was mentioning to you, like we talk a lot about problems we perceive on the left, and there are many and sundry criticisms we have. But what's always looming in my mind is like, oh well, these are criticisms I have of myself as well, right? I am not really outside of this critique. It's also a self-critique, and I kind of just I'm deeply tired of trying to maintain some kind of intellectual rightness, some position to kind of watch the world burn from. It just doesn't. I'm not saying that I'm not accusing any of you of that, but I feel that way sometimes myself, and that's just very tiring and lonely.
Well, and this
Online, on the left online, I see that. Like, I see this fatigue of being right, quote unquote. So that's what prompted this discussion today.
Well, I mean, yeah, and this is what is meant by the ruthless criticism of all that exists. We are not above or outside of all that exists. To ruthlessly criticize all that exists means to criticize ourselves as well, especially since we have been, for so long, standard bearers of this thing, this amorphous phenomenon that we call the left. It's like, well, we have a criticism of that. That is going to be a self-criticism as well. It's the only way to be honest about it.
It's difficult to be honest, especially when you're being recorded. I mean, I'm not saying we're lying ever. I'm just saying maybe I don't mean honest, but like vulnerably honest, as in, fuck, I really have no idea what to do. I have an idea of like how to, like an innate instinct of how to love my fellow human being and like gather people around me and communicate what is meaningful across the distances and send friends books in the mail and things like that, like, but as far as organizing in the rubble or whatever, like, as far as like beginning something from wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, that's daunting.
Well,
don't you find the Hegel?
Sort of. The very fact that something is determined as a limitation implies that the limitation is already transcended.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot in regard to our conversation about liberalism.
Рабочие и крестьяне не смогут прожить без нас. Без нас некому будет установить порядок, определить работу, принудить к труду. Без нас все развалится и государство распадется.